Hello, it's Helen Griffin from Golden Apple's knitting blog, and I have yet another new cast-on to learn. This is another cast-on that is from the collection of Chinese cast-ons that Vu Daikon on Ravelry created some links to. I looked through the still pictures and slowly figured out the cast-ons, and now I want to teach them to you. This is a variation of the knit cast-on and of the cable cast-on. It's a bit tricky to get even. I'm still working on it. But then I don't usually do the knit cast on or the cable cast on, so these are not natural movements for me that I'm practiced at. So we're going to start with a short tail and put a slip knot on the needle. Pretty straightforward. And we're going to do a knit cast on. Well, we have to do a knit cast on because even if we were doing cable cast ons, we start with a knit cast on. Put the knit cast on the needle. This is not a stitch. For this first stitch, this is just a holder. So now we're going to do a cable cast on. I'm going to try it here. Then do a yarn over. So we have 2 threads on the right hand needle. We're going to then just slip this placeholder stitch to the right hand needle. There's now 3 stitches on the right hand needle and 1. And then we're going to knit again into that first loop. We now have, and we're going to leave that first loop on the needle. Now we now have 4 stitches plus this is the real stitch. Now what we're going to do, and I have trouble doing this in one go, especially in these chunky yarns that I'm using, we're going to pass the stitches on the right needle. That's the slipped, the yarn over, and now here we go with the original cable. This acrylic yarn is not very stretchy either, and splitty. Okay, now we're going to put this stitch onto the left hand needle, and that is our first stitch. After this, things change because now we have 2 stitches to work with, so things are going to change. Just as with cable cast on, things changed after the second stitch. So now what we're going to do is a cable cast on. Standard cable cast on. Pull the stitch out from between the 2, leave it on the right hand needle, make a yarn over. Now we're going to do a knit stitch, a knit cast on. We're going to leave this stitch over here on this needle, and this needle now has 3 stitches. We're going to take 2 of them, pass them over the knit stitch, let them drop off, take the knit stitch, and put it on the needle. 1 knob stitch done. Okay, or I should say 1 knob beyond the start. Let me reposition again. So we're going to do a cable cast on, putting the needle between the 2 stitches, pull it out, make a yarn over. Then we're going to knit the cast on stitch, and then we're going to bind off the cable. There we go, sorry. Bind off the cable and the yarn over. Let's get that again. It's a little, as I say, I find this very difficult to do with chunky yarn. Easier to demo, so I'm going to do it in 2. Okay, I'm going to do it in 2 steps, maybe. No, maybe not. There we go. I'm going to take these 2 stitches, bind them off, and put that stitch on the needle. And there's our first knob a little lumpy, second knob pretty, third knob pretty. And here we go again. Between the stitches, wrap the needle, pull out a cable cast on. Make a yarn over on the needle with the cable cast on. Knit the stitch and do a knit cast on. Leave the old stitch on the needle as you would with knit cast on. Bind these 2 stitches off over the knit cast on the right needle. Put the new stitch onto the right needle, and we're now up to 2, 4, 5. Again, number 6. Do a cable, yarn over, knit, bind off, try again, bind off, new knit stitch to be put onto the needle. Now, as I say, I'm using a very chunky acrylic yarn. I'm using size 8mm or US 11 US 11 8mm needles with a very non-stretchy and somewhat splitty acrylic yarn. Done in a fine needle with a fine yarn, this is actually quite pretty. I like these little knobs or buttons that are created by this cast on. It's not that stretchy. It's really not. I'm not going to say it's stretchy. Seems very sturdy, very attractive. So let's try again, making another knob. Cable, yarn over, knit, bind off. There's the hard part, bind off. Bind off. Oops, no, that stitch was bound off. Put the new stitch on the needle. Another little knob made. You see these knobs almost look like a little knit stitch with a bar across them. I think it's a very attractive cast on. I think it would be really pretty for something that requires a sturdy cast on, something that requires a somewhat attractive cast on, but I wouldn't think that it's stretchy enough, and I will admit I haven't worked with it. And there's this, it doesn't look as good till it's slightly positioned. I don't think it's stretchy enough for something like mittens or hats, or a cast on edge for a neckline, something where you need extra stretch. Though for a top down sweater, it might make a very pretty cast on. And sometimes for a top down sweater that's a cardigan style sweater that you button on versus a pull over your head sweater, you actually want a pretty firm neckline, because the neckline, because it bears the entire weight of the sweater, can stretch out. This might be an excellent cast on for a top down neck sweater, cardigan sweater, because it doesn't stretch too much. It stretches, it doesn't stretch too much. It would provide a pretty edge around your neck without stretching too much and having the neckline stretch out of shape. We've all seen that on some, pretty designs where the cast on edge just stretches and the whole neckline of the sweater sags. So I'm sure there's uses for it, but aside from the very first one, which is slightly different, it's slightly trickier, it's not that hard a cast on to do. Not perfectly easy, but it works with tools you already know, which is a knit cast on, or correction, it starts with a cable cast on. That's nothing new. A yarn over, nothing new. A knit cast on, nothing new. So I mean, we're not asking for a lot of new knowledge. And then, as I say, the hard part is taking these two stitches and binding. See, I still haven't gotten this fluid. So you can expect a learning curve. Even if you're good at cable and knit cast on, I suspect there's a learning curve. Bind off the two stitches. See, I'm not getting it loose enough, but I find if I get it too loose, it looks sloppy. Now I try again. See, so with all cast-ons, there is a learning curve. What you know is going to make a cast on easier or harder. And since, as I say, I'm not big on using either cable or knit cast-ons, they're not my favorites. I'm not nearly as good at this cast-on as I am at some others, because it's not my, okay? So bind off the two, finally, and put it on the needle. You have a little knob with a bar. These little knobs exist. As I say, they look like a little knit stitch with a bar across the top, which I think is very pretty. I think it's a pretty cast on. I think it's worthwhile for me to practice and learn and find a use for. And I hope you can too.